So, as I touched on today, we're going to be talking about LLCs and how to get all set up with it so that, at the end of the day, you understand the uses of the LLCs, why it's important to leverage them, and really the flexibility of it all. Today, we're going to be talking about the literal process, one, two, three, four, of setting up your own LLC. If you're doing it as a partnership, the types of considerations that you need to have taken to mind. All businesses cost money to get off the ground, so we'll talk a little bit about that. When attorneys are actually necessary to be part of the process, and how to leverage your LLC for asset protection purposes. Really, I'm here to give you the download on how to make life as easy as humanly possible and to be able to save you money so that you don't actually have to hire attorneys every step of the way. But let's start out with the most basic question. So you want to start a business. Now, there's a couple of ways to start a business that isn't very protected. Now, I've brought up the types of entities that we can use, the limited partnerships, the corporations, and the LLCs. All of those are known as limited liability vehicles. What limited liability means is that you can get, well, if the company gets sued, those creditors cannot reach your personal assets. There are a couple of types of business entities that aren't really business entities and they're not limited liability. That is the sole proprietorship. If you set up your own business, you're not doing it through any sort of entity. You are technically a sole proprietor. Secondarily, we've got general partnerships. There's a difference between a limited partnership and a general partnership. But if you don't file a limited liability entity, you are a general partnership. Now, for both of those, if there's ever a lawsuit of the business, you can be held personally liable for anything that happens with the lawsuit. And I bring that up because it is a horrible situation that, especially when it comes to a general partnership. A partnership where you don't file with the state of any limited liability enterprise. People talk about joint ventures all the time. And I just want to be clear that a joint venture defaults to a general partnership that everybody has unlimited liability. I don't care if you own 1% of that partnership, you're 100% responsible for any liabilities, risks, or issues that happen through the partnership. So that's where it gets to be really important to know and understand the options for limited liability vehicles. And for today, we're going to be talking very specifically about creating an LLC. As I had mentioned, there are other limited liability vehicles, but the fact of the matter is the LLCs are the most used and most versatile of a type of entity that you ever end up using. Once you're setting up an LLC, the process is you file with the Secretary of State of whatever state you're setting up the entity under. Now, if you're buying a operating business that has a location, or you're buying real estate that of course it has a location, I am a huge fan of actually keeping life as simple as possible. And if you're already subject to the laws of the state that the business is located or the real estate is located, I'm a huge fan of just forming the LLC in that state. You're already subject to the laws. Yes, you can form in a different state like Delaware, Nevada, Wyoming, and we're going to walk through the process for each one of those states, what you got to do to set up your own LLC. But again, that's only if there's really not a business location. So when we talk about like a syndication to acquire a commercial building, There's one entity that will own the real estate. We'll generally end up flipping that in whatever state the real estate is located in, but oftentimes there's a management LLC that provides the ongoing management to that company. The reason why we set it up as a separate LLC entity is actually to provide an additional layer of limited liability protection. There's always some risks in business. There's always some risks in bringing in investors. So just like I would encourage anybody to own your share of a business through a limited liability vehicle, an LLC in general, the same holds true if you're managing an investment. You still should have all of your operations and what you do actually through the LLC itself as well. Now, we're going to talk very specifically about Delaware, Wyoming, and Nevada. Reason being, these are the most common states to form entities in. And we're just going to go through state by state and talk about it a little bit more general. And we'll kick this off with, let's talk about Delaware. And just so that you understand, we do have a download where you can get all of this information. If you don't mind just going to this QR code, click on it. There's going to be a page that you can actually download all of the links that we're going to be talking about, as well as we're going to have a templated operating agreement. So like I said, we're literally setting you up so that you're not going to need to hire an attorney to set up your LLC. Now, there are times that attorneys are necessary evils, but until that point, don't worry about it. You can set them up yourself, but please go to this QR code. It'll take you right to these pages that we're going to be talking. And we will start with about the LLCs or any information about a business through Delaware. That it's a great state just to provide that protection, the exact opposite of transparency. And to start with, we'll go to the delaware.gov. They have a page that's literally the step-by-step process for forming a new entity. Choosing the type of business entity. Every state in America, everywhere, requires you to have a registered agent. That's talked about right here. With a registered agent, what it means is there is somebody, and that somebody may be a person, it may be another company, but somebody within the state that the company is formed serves as that registered agent, which means if there is ever a lawsuit that gets filed or a public notice for taxes coming from the state, or like I said, any type of lawsuits, rather than it getting served onto you directly, any of the paperwork is served on the registered agent, and then the registered agent's responsibility is to send it to you as the actual company holding it. And then while we are going through the actual process of setting up a company, we're going to look at this. But some states will call it a certificate of formation. A certificate of formation, that is what creates the LLC. Other states call it articles of organization. Actually is the exact same thing. Corporations, there may be articles of incorporation or certificate of incorporation. It's a little bit of a tweak in the wording, but at the end of the day, it always means the exact same thing. So in Delaware, we have a certificate of formation that is actually used. That is what we will file. Now, in the state of Delaware, there are two documents that will be filed with the state. One of them is, we call it the cover letter, which basically just runs through I need to order this LLC. How are they going to send the information back to you? And then it also does some additional costs for if you can't do regular processing. I will say with the state of Delaware, even with normal processing, we tend to get an entity back within about a week, give or take. But so then the 2 documents that's this paper form giving the basic information about needing to order the LLC, and then secondarily, we have the actual certificate of formation. And I want to really point out how simple this document is for the state of Delaware. To start with, first, the LLC's name. Second, the registered agent and who they're gonna be. Third, whether or not the LLC is getting, uh, deferred in terms of the creation or if it's immediate with the filing, and just generally other stuff. Now with the state of Delaware, you can't find out, and if you notice with this, there's not a line that says, "Who are the managers? Who are the owners? What's the address of the company itself?" None of this information is being requested when you're creating a Delaware LLC, and even once you do go to the website, if anybody's trying to search out, "What do you own?" You can't search your name directly. They have to know the identity of the LLC, and then they can pay $25 to search every LLC to figure out which one you actually have management controls over. So Delaware, I love using the state laws to set up entities, use them a lot for the confidentiality aspects of it. Costs about $250 per year in the state. Franchise tax, the filing fees with the state. After the first year, you do have to let them know who manages and controls the LLC as well as the address. But to just get it set up, you're not providing any of that information, and at any time, it's a complete pain to figure out who actually owns or controls a Delaware LLC. So just to high level recap, to form your Delaware LLC, you need to fill out the order form. You're sending the forms and the filing to the Division of Corporations in Delaware, and only second document that you need is this Delaware Limited Liability Company certificate of formation. That's it. It literally is that easy.